The shocking thing is that the teacher, William Willock, who taught at the new school in West Heath in Sevenoaks, has already been convicted and handed a 3-year community order. That's back in 2010. Now, the really shocking thing about this case is that he was the school's child protection officer. So he was in a position of absolute trust, and this girl was a teenager at the school, and over a 2-year period he encouraged her to send photographs of herself. There were 18 of her in various stages of undress and 3 that the police said were highly graphic. Which aren't detailed in the newspapers this morning, so you can imagine what they are. And this girl was, there's no doubt about it, she was groomed by him and she sent them to him. Now, he has already been found guilty of possessing indecent images, and she has gone back into court and sued him for emotional distress and so on, and she has been awarded damages totalling over £50,000. Obviously, some of that will go towards her costs. Now, sending images of a sexual nature is now an offence. The NSPCC said in the papers today that while they welcome the award, they're worried that, you know, just awarding people money and damages for financial distress isn't part of dealing with their with their distress and their emotional upset. There've got to be other ways of doing that as well. And I personally worry that it could open the floodgates to all sorts of cases and claims going through the court. Although believe me, I'm not in any doubt about the dreadful nature of this case and the distress that's been caused to this girl.
Well, that's the other thing we mustn't forget, is that, you know, although it wasn't physical abuse by him, it was emotional abuse, like you said.
And she doesn't trust anybody now,
and she's now saying,
that.
you know, she's in her early 20s now. It's affecting her very emotionally, very much still. It's affecting relationships. She said she's worried that any relationship she starts, that person will ultimately abuse her. She has not been in the workplace.
Yeah, but
so you have to take all that into account.
I do take all of that into account, but if I was going through all that, 25,000, 50,000, that's not going to make me feel better emotionally. I would want counselling, and I'd want...
But then that money...
I'd want help.
But does that money enable her to be able to have the time off work, so she doesn't need possibly to be earning for a little while, and also she could pay privately, because as we all know, it takes a little while to get... I'm not saying counselling isn't available on the NHS, but it's not always immediately available. So maybe that is... it's not compensation anyway for what he's done to her.
No, I mean,
in this case, I think, you know, it's different because he did groom her, and he's an older man with a young girl.
The key thing is it's a groundbreaking decision. This is never... I mean, this is a new ruling and will change how people approach these.
Yeah, and I think that's my issue with it. This, for me, is an isolated case. Again, grooming, manipulation. It's very clear what's gone on here. But the fact that you can now go to court over the fact that you sent somebody a nude picture, I really do think it's... I don't know, I find it quite uncomfortable that you can financially gain. What about people who, you know, a scorned ex-lover or someone who, you know... I mean, OK, for instance, I mean, I'm of a generation where people do send nude pictures. I'm not including myself. But they do, and, you know, whether you're in a long-distance relationship, it is a form of communication now, which I know might be hard to believe, but it is
a form of blackmail.
But this is where I was getting at. And, you know, you might be in a relationship with someone, you've sent them a nude picture, I regret it, I'm now emotionally distressed. Can I go to the court and then...
Well, I think if you had sent... If it's an ex-partner of yours... Just them having the pictures is maybe not causing you distress, but if they then publish them on the internet or show people, then it probably would cause you emotional distress, and maybe you should be allowed to go.
On the other end of this...
Sorry, Carl. What about people... What about people who... Because what they're saying is now that sexting is going to become a crime.
It is a crime already.
But what about people who communicate in that way, who are sexually explicit and communicating that way?
I think that's what we need to tell our children, though, now, that are doing all that, that it is actually a punishable crime now, so be very, very careful. I mean, I had a lady write to me recently whose 16-year-old son and his girlfriend at the time, he sent her a picture of himself naked, and they then split up, and her parents found the picture and reported him. He's now in the sex offenders register for 2 years. I mean, that's just
that's
too...
extreme,
that's
isn't it?
too harsh. That's going to ruin his life, really.
Well, the MPs have said that the new law, which makes sexting a criminal offence, ought to be dealt with differently. They want the police to log offences which involve children under the age of consent, you know, between two people under the age of consent. They want it logged differently so they don't get a criminal record, because I think they have realised that under the current law it's not you know, it's ridiculous. But what is interesting about this landmark decision to give this woman, you know, £50,000 is that it will open the floodgates, and I do worry that the courts will be clogged up with all sorts of claims.
To me more about, because some people say, oh, maybe it's a deterrent for anybody who's thinking of grooming a child. This man only got a 3-year community order for all of that. And to me, you know, I think the punishment for the crime of grooming a vulnerable young person needs to be much more extreme than that.